Hi, everyone. We're here. You just missed. I keep wanting to call you Posey, and I know you're trying to go by your actual name now, but it
No,
just doesn't
whatever you
seem
like.
right
It's
to
fine.
me.
Fine.
Okay, Posey. You just missed Posey's belch.
It's so
Should have
quiet.
gone live 30 seconds earlier.
I never do such things. Ask my husband and children. Never.
Me neither. Never. I'm very polite, always. I always forget to introduce the show and do all the normal things that you're supposed to do on YouTube. So every once in a while, I do remember. These are one of those times. So this is The Same Drugs with Meghan Murphy. I'm Meghan Murphy. I'm here with Kellie-Jay Keen, who I love very much. And can everyone hear us okay? Is everything like look and sound good? Let us know if there's issues, because as I was saying to Posey earlier, the Wi-Fi situation over here can be a little bit sketchy sometimes, but I'm doing my best to play around with the setup. Also, please subscribe to my channel, and also please don't laugh at me, Posey. I'm very professional.
All right, you carry on.
And I have a very good memory. And if you so desire, sign up on Patreon. The link's down below to support my work. We don't actually have a whole bunch of like wealthy funders in the. I don't even know what to call our movement anymore. I would like to call it the women's rights movement, but some people, of course, call it the gender critical movement. Some people call it a feminist movement. I don't know. How do you describe it, Posey?
Grifters. Just a grifter movement.
Yeah, that's most accurate.
Gold. Just gold.
Making tons and tons of cash just off of being mean to people for no reason. Rude, disrespectful.
I especially do a lot of that. Yeah, just gold. Women's gold.
Yeah.
I don't call it anything anymore, actually. I don't know. It's sort of, I call it loosely a movement, but it just feels it's not even traveling along with people sometimes, is it? It's really weird.
I don't feel like it's a movement anymore either, and it feels really like disappointing and depressing to me, because I, in particular, invested quite a bit. I don't mean, there's many other women who invested lots of time, quite a bit more than I have in this movement. But I did spend like almost 10 years of my life talking about a feminist movement and doing work for the feminist movement, and trying to bring others into the feminist movement, and trying to explain to people what the feminist movement is and why it matters. So it is a little bit frustrating and disappointing to feel like, I don't know that there's really such a thing. I don't think there is such a thing anymore.
Well, whilst you were doing good work, there were lots of people who center men and men's needs, and they were actually working against you within the movement. So I think that's what happened to feminism. I mean, maybe it was always a little bit doomed once people started sort of calling themselves egalitarian as opposed to feminist, as if that was a useful thing to do. Or I don't know. I just think some of the aims of the initial feminist movement, I think a lot of wars were won, and then people sort of thought it was all over. And so some feminism just looked like a little bit of whinging, when actually it had a useful purpose.
So are you referencing like the third wave? So the third wave that kind of came along in the 90s and decided to talk about prostitution and pornography as very empowering for women, and self-objectification and a bunch of other ridiculous things?
Well, once you translate some of the feminist fights, useful fights, and you translate them into actually it's empowering to be a prostitute, once you can get some people to believe that as a feminist position, it kind of, the whole thing's going to pot. And then obviously capitalism, and I'm not an anti-capitalist. I quite like a bit of capitalism. I think it's done the world a great deal of good. But
I love an income. I love an income.
Yeah, it's weird. Like food on the table, a roof over my head, crazy sort of luxury. But once capitalism came along and feminism became like fashionable, then fashionable in a not like cool, let's work for rights of women, but let's just stick the word feminism in stuff, and it means something, and isn't it great, and women will love it. I think it's a little bit doomed, and I feel I feel like I'm being insulting to the women who did do and do continue in the name of feminism to do some really great stuff. But I just feel that it's a word that doesn't mean much. So in 2012, I went to the Filia in London, and Finn
That
Mackay,
was so long ago. Wow, 2012. That's when I started Feminist Current.
Well, back then, gender neutral parenting meant that you allowed your children not to be shoved into stereotypes. That's what it meant back then. I was interviewed with my husband and children in the Times with this, like, yeah, we let our boys, we're so great, we let our boys do ironing toys and push chairs. That's what gender neutral parenting meant. And now obviously it means something absolutely catastrophic. But at that event, Finn Mackay, of the now calls herself trans masculine and trans women are women fame, she talked about, we don't need to rename feminism, we need to reclaim it. And she now is one of the sort of architects of male-centered so-called feminism.
That's odd. I mean, and I said that for a long time too. So I don't know. I'm always trying to be transparent because some things that I'm critical of now were things that I participated in. But yeah, I was sort of always like, no, like feminism is ours, and spent like so many years just insisting that other people were doing it wrong and like that our version was the right version, which I mean, I still believe, you know, it's still about women's rights. It's supposed to be about centering women and women's needs and primarily fighting violence against women also. But, you know, I think that, I guess it's just, to me, the word has just become sort of a lost cause because nobody understands what it means at all. And way too many people call themselves feminists while actively opposing women's rights, and not just obviously in terms of prostitution and pornography, but in terms of obviously this notion that men who claim to be women are in fact the most marginalized population on earth. If is that a population of people, then I guess we should just say that men are the most marginalized population on earth and not try to differentiate, because I get frustrated when people do that too, as though there's some separate category of men who like femininity, who are somehow like a specific category that is determinable by anything at all.
It's so mad, isn't it? That just we've really run fast into this notion that if you decide to dress a certain way, you're suddenly a different category of human. It's now going through. So my kids have recently changed schools, fortunately, because now the trans thing has really hit the school that they would have been at this past academic year. And all the girls are either queer because they once liked a man, like the boy who is now bisexual, or they are trans, and they make fun of the girl who's cis and straight because straight is really boring. So it's just everywhere. I think it's going to burst though, right? I think this will burst because it's not true, and it can't. Things like this can't just carry on. It's like the house market.
It's too crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, now that the men are talking about it, I think they can like take that ball and run with it, right?
Oh, it's so great. I feel
Benjamin Boyce told me that, and I don't want to diss Benjamin Boyce because obviously Benjamin Boyce and I are like in love with each other, so I don't want to, you know, talk shit about my internet boyfriend. But you know, he said, you know, but I think that, you know, women come up with the idea and then men follow through and really take it to where it needs to go. Like women can start it and then we can take it to the finish line. And I was like, I'm sorry, pardon? Benjamin, if you're listening, I'm not mad at you. I'm just making fun of you. He wasn't joking.
Oh my God. I mean, maybe in a really cruel, horrible, moment of truth. Maybe that is kind of true, and that isn't true because women can't finish something, although I do think groups of women find it really difficult because they're too busy taking lumps of each other to actually, if
It's
this
almost as
movement,
though they don't want to finish something. It's true. I don't want to like back up Benjamin's point, but it's true that sometimes it seems as though women really hate accomplishing things more than anything.
well, I think you have to be quite thick-skinned. So, because I'm so great, because I've been attacked so many times and I keep going, I don't actually think there's too many women that could just keep relentlessly walking forward. And that doesn't mean that I'm special. I'm just probably a little more that way inclined. But loads of men are that way inclined. Loads of men have their eye on the prize, and it doesn't really matter what happens. They just keep going for it. Maybe that's true. Maybe women are too busy like elbowing each other in the face.
Don't admit that Benjamin's right publicly.
It's obviously also wrong because there are plenty of women like myself and you who are capable of finishing, but there are also both men and women who won't take our point seriously because we've said it.
Yeah. Okay. And I kind of think you're right now that you've put it this way, because, I think that we are sort of oddities. Like, I also have an incredibly thick skin and I recognize that. And, I've been attacked as you have over and over and over and over again. And I just kind of keep going. And most people don't seem to be capable of that. Most people kind of crumble under that kind of pressure. And I don't know what it is about me or about you. That
for me, it's a hateful bigotry that I've been practicing for such a long time. Yeah, it does. So I've always been hated because I've always been, quite prejudiced for a really long time. So I'm well practiced in being hated.
Yeah, the bigotry kind of fuels you at this point.
It's kind of like petrol to a sports car for me. Oh dear. I do think but men don't even have to say, in fact, two things. Men can say a lot worse and more prejudiced sounding things than women and get away with it. And they can also say hardly anything and be celebrated for it in a way that I didn't actually know happened so often. But I think both you and I know men that are far more extreme in what they've said that don't really seem to get targeted as much, and also quite, there's quite a lot of mediocre men on all sides of any debate that manage to be superstars.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's incredibly frustrating to me. And I don't think I actually, because I've heard women say that many times over the years, but I don't think I actually really truly saw it until this whole gender identity debate, because I feel like that's what's happened now, is that, there's a bunch of women who stuck their necks out over the past decade or whatever, and were punished brutally for doing so. We're censored, like us, we're sort of pushed off of the internet, pushed out of the conversation, either pushed out of making a living, or it's, become very difficult to make a living. And then now sort of, I feel like there's a whole bunch of men who waited around until it was sort of safe, and then they started talking about it, or they even started talking about it a few years ago, and literally nothing happened to them. There's guys on the right who've said the same things that we've said, and I'm not even blaming them. Like, I'm glad that they're saying those things, but it's like literally nothing's happened except that they've gotten bigger and richer and they've gotten bigger platforms. And I find it like a bit baffling. I don't know why that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think I really understood some of the things that people had said about men in comparison to women. So when Germaine Greer said women have no idea how much men hate us, I had no idea how true that was until about the last 5 years. I had no idea that the world really was really heard women in a sort of way whenever we speak, as if we're not
That's
saying
like
anything.
a really accurate impersonation of me.
But you know what I mean? That, like, we had Margaret Thatcher as our prime minister when I was a little girl, and she sort of probably had a voice a similar pitch to mine, and mine's already lowish, but when she talked, she lowered her voice. Like, that's what she got trained to do, just to lower her voice, because, and I hear it too. I'm not going to say I don't criticize certain women that do get a little bit of a platform and think that voice is, I don't know if you can get past the shrillness of the voice. So I do it too. Perhaps that's why men have routinely spoken publicly, or been public speakers rather, far more than women throughout. It's a terrible
It's
thing
nicer to listen to. Well, yeah, it is. There's a lot of terrible things that we could admit to. I think, like, okay, but so I feel like we didn't finish our thought around, or perhaps it was just me that didn't finish my thought around, men taking the ball and running with it. And I think there might actually be something to that, which is that probably men are less inclined to crumble under that pressure. And I think that we get hit harder socially. Like, I don't really see men who are speaking critically about the gender identity thing being ostracized and attacked and vilified by their social circles, like by their friends, like in a really, really personal way, in the way that we are. Or I don't know if that's happened to you, but that's definitely happened to me and most women that I know who've spoken out about this. And that's been the hardest part for me. Like, the hardest part for me was not, a bunch of people on Twitter talking shit about me and trying to cancel me, although it makes me incredibly angry to see, libel published in mainstream Canadian newspapers like the Globe and Mail. And it's just okay to do that now. It's just okay to publish whatever you like, no matter whether it's true or not, and then refuse me the right to reply, which the Globe and Mail did. But the hardest part was really the behavior of friends, or people who I thought were friends, or people who were friends of friends, or, the behaviors of people that were sort of connected to my actual life in Vancouver. Yeah. And I think that's what makes women step out. Either the threat of getting like fired from their jobs, but I think more so even than things like death threats and that kind of harassment.
Well, from my experience of even children, so I've had 3 boys and a girl, and I obviously am a girl, was a girl rather. I'm now a fully fledged woman. But even the way boys behave at a really young age in comparison to girls, boys just boast at each other. So I've had like 3 different ages of boys, and all they get to a certain age and they're in the back of your car and it's like, I've got this game, and they don't go, hi, how are you? Right. So when they walk into primary school and they see each other, it's not how are you? It's I've got this, or I played that, or I've done this. And they both just talk at each other about themselves. Well, girls don't do that from a really young age. It's hi, how are you? Oh, are you okay? And there's lots of that stuff. So I wonder if just that basic, and I don't believe that is just socialization. I think that's a bit of a nonsense. Because it's happened to all of mine. I'd say we had quite an equal little household. They all went to this Montessori little kindergarten nursery thing, where everything was, I don't believe that those, I mean, maybe it's all subtle and I just am too stupid to understand it. But I just think that on the basis that women, some women have babies and give birth, that an asset and a skill that you would need to keep that baby alive is understanding how that baby feels. I wonder if actually it is a skill that women have and we pass on to each other.
That sounds possible. It's really only something that's occurred to me this year. So I'm like, oh, okay. I was wrong that everything is socialization. I mean, I think that there's always sort of a combination of the two. I don't think that, evolution and socialization, I don't think we can separate the two. But it does make sense that women would need that particular form of empathy. I think I I don't think I attach that to the politeness that is expected of women, in the way that I have now, having spoken to people who are engaged in that area. But yeah, I mean, it is, women are expected to be much more polite. And what that means is like, don't bring up controversial subjects. Don't make anybody feel uncomfortable. Don't stress anybody out. Don't tell the truth ever. Telling the truth is so offensive to women. It's true. Like, it's like, I mean, maybe there's men that don't like it, but I have a lot of female friends who've made it very clear to me that they don't want to hear true things.
We don't even want to hear, really, if we ask someone, do I look fat? We don't ever really want someone to go, yes.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I do. I never have thought that I was so fat that I would be offended if somebody was like, you look a little bit fat in that. I'd be like, oh, okay, you're right. I do look a little bit fat in that.
I'll tell you when you know you're getting fat, when someone goes, you've got such a nice face.
I remember somebody said once to me, this was like I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and I had obviously gotten a bit bloated or something. And somebody was like, oh, is your sister curvy like you? And I was like, curvy? It's like, no one's ever called me curvy before. It's like, okay. Like,
well,
got it.
We went on holiday and my daughter was about 9 months, and I put on so I was used to be tiny, teeny tiny, sort of Kylie Minogue size. And then when I had my babies, I don't know what's happened to my voice, going through male puberty, obviously. And when I had my babies, I just put on loads and loads of weight. And the most weight I put on with my daughter, and I was still really fat when we went on holiday. And I was talking to this woman and she went, my husband and I were just saying, oh, she's got a lovely face. You've got a lovely face. And I just said to my husband, how fat am I? And he was like, you don't love. I'm like, they've just told me I've got a nice face. It's bloody enormous. Just
yeah, I think. I mean, I had the problem of being really, really thin in high school, probably up until like, I don't know, my mid-20s. I just it never even occurred to me to eat a vegetable or to attempt not to eat like pizza and donuts and drink like 24 beers on a Saturday. And then it caught up to me. So I think it took me about 5 years to adjust to the fact that I was getting fatter and I couldn't just eat anything I want. And now I'm at 40, so it's impossible to lose weight. I try, but I mean, I don't know if I try that hard. But
a lockdown in the UK. That's like wine o'clock every night. It's just terrible. Really bad.
Is this new? Wine o'clock every night is new to you because of lockdown? I've been doing this since I was 20 years old.
But I have to get up for school runs and stuff. And so I can't, well, you know, tell a lie. Since we moved, so for about 5 years, we've been drinking more nights than not. And it just gets to the point where I'm now like, even my skin's kind of going, do you want to stop drinking? Just
okay. So
bad.
when we had our COVID lockdowns in like when it started in March, all of a sudden my skin got better and like my eye bags went away because I couldn't go out partying. And I was like, wow, I look great. But then now I'm in Mexico and I think I'm
drinking I'm drinking Mexican beer.
I'm still drinking water because it's early here. Okay, so somebody asked a question. I know. I feel like on live streams I forget that there's an audience, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so fat. Oh, my wrinkles. What products do you use? Okay, have either of you? This is from PM Berkeley. Have either of you thought of viewing women's odd/mean/distant behavior as a trauma-related thing? A trauma psychologist would be good to interview. You can answer this, but I don't think it's a trauma-related thing, and I get really annoyed when people chalk up women's bad behavior to trauma.
Yeah, I've also encountered people that talk about women. The power dynamic of women means that they're mean to each other. I don't think so. Not unless most of the girls I spent time at primary school with had some sort of hidden traumas at home. No, I don't. I think it might. I'm willing to think about the whole power dynamic that maybe women don't have so much power, so they exert it amongst themselves. But I actually think the meanness of women is on the basis they can't do the truthful, honest, open, straightforward sort of stuff. So it comes out in a covert, manipulative, dishonest, ostracizing way. So girls, even as little girls, and women do it right throughout their lives, they will ostracize an individual out of a group in order to reinforce group dynamics and make everybody in the group feel secure, and B, just to really punish someone for some sort of wrongdoing.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think I get frustrated when women's bad behavior is chalked up to either to trauma or oppression, because so many feminists do this. I'm sure you've noticed online. Anytime a woman behaves horribly, it's like, oh, well, women's oppression, they're powerless, so they have to lash out like this. And I'm like, no, this person is clearly crazy and you should stop enabling them. But also, I think that I've taken it too far because I've gotten so annoyed by this analysis that I probably write it off too quickly. But I do think that women's I was so mean in elementary school, and it wasn't because I was traumatized. It was because I think you just do that to seek power, and because you don't want to be the bullied one, so you bully, right? And played like cliquey games where it was like, we're having a party and everyone is invited except for you because I don't like you, because I don't know, the boy that I have a crush on likes you, so I'm going to punish you.
You've got nicer hair, you're prettier, you live in a bigger house, you've got more friends.
No, they did not have nicer hair than me, and they were not prettier. Maybe he probably had a bigger house. Okay, this is a good question for later. I'll save it for a little bit because I sort of wanted to finish this conversation. But I think that it's about Meghan Markle, just to give you a heads up.
Okay.
Because I bet you have an opinion about her.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I sort of do also. But I think that the pressure to be polite and to make sure you don't offend and get along means that nobody is straightforward with each other and everyone is passive aggressive. And so instead of just saying, hey, like, you're being an asshole, or I disagree with you, or actually, I don't really want to hang out with you. Like, I don't really like you that much. I mean, that's kind of harsh too, but instead of doing that, you play weird passive-aggressive games, and you punish, and you gossip, and you start rumors, and you act fake, and then talk trash behind their backs, and so on and so forth.
Gossip is a bonding thing, right? Sharing secrets and sharing things about other people is also the way.
I love gossip. Sorry, finish.
No. Look, you can cut in. I'm not married to you. You can cut in.
No, finish. I have an interrupting problem. I recognize it. I'm stopping myself.
I have one too. And my husband really moans at me, and then he does it to me all the time. And so now I go absolutely like batshit if he just dares to interrupt. I'm like, you. Anyway, I can't remember what I was saying. Something really dull. What was I saying?
Me neither. Yeah, it was probably so boring, and that's why I had to interject.
Saved your audience.
Guys, what were we talking about? Oh, gossip. Okay, so I actually really like gossip, and I'm not one of those people who thinks like, oh, you should never gossip, because of course you should. Like, gossip is how people shared news before there was news. This is just how we bond with each other and we communicate information. But I suppose in regards to this kind of gossip, I'm speaking more about trash talking behind people's backs, or starting mean rumors that are untrue, and so on and so forth, or trying to eject people from the group. I've noticed that women do that a lot, where it's like, which I find so strange, because I can't imagine, I'm an adult, and so as an adult, maybe when I was a kid or a teenager, but as an adult, I can't imagine telling somebody, I can't hang out with you anymore so long as you're associated with them. Like, so long as you stay friends with Meghan, then I can't be friends with you. So you have to choose. And there are a lot of women who are my age and older who've done that about me to my friends and been like, well, if you're going to continue to be friends with Meghan, then I get like, pick. It's like, do you not feel like an idiot saying something like that out loud? Like, aren't you embarrassed?
So weird. I've just never really, I mean, even in this sort of whatever we want to call it, people have done awful things to me. And then, I mean, as long as people I don't know very well that associate with people who've done some absolutely terrible things, I'd just rather not, because sometimes I felt that I then leave myself open. So I have a very, very kind of microscopic circle of trust. And that's it. And so in that circle of trust, I can't have people who regularly associate with people who've done pretty terrible public things to me. But that's more of a sort of looking after myself thing, rather than taking a friend that I've got a good solid friendship and saying, if you talk to that person, I won't talk to you. But I don't know what that is. I think that is also about this reinforcing your own position within a group. That's what I think gossip is. Often it's sharing stuff, even about each other. We'll gossip about ourselves to our friends almost, just so we've both got this currency in the friendship.
I mean, I guess somebody in the comments just asked if you know about the mother wound. I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is? The mother wound? Okay. No. Sorry, guys. We don't know what that is, but let us know in the comments. I mean, yeah, like I have to have like pretty strict boundaries around the people that I engage with and associate with, because it's way too easy for me to get burned. And I have this thing that's probably happened to you before, where people like to, you know, pretend that they know you by sharing information about you, or being, oh, well, you know, me and Meghan don't really get along. And like, I'll see people on Twitter being like, oh, you know, I had an altercation. We've had issues. And I was like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Like, I don't know who you are, but apparently people pretend to be close to you. They pretend that they've had some kind of friendship with you and you had a falling out, and they're, oh, well, Meghan's like this. I'm like, no, I've never met you before. But you sound very important now that you're trashing me on the internet.
I don't have too much of that, because I don't associate with I don't associate with anyone. I don't have too much of that where people pretend they know me. But a lot of people really don't like me very much.
I've noticed that.
I don't mind saying that.
What did you do?
I've done nothing. I don't know. It's all too much. It's all too much.
Do you think? Okay, like, do you think that? So there is this phenomenon. I've noticed, in any case, I'm not sure if you've noticed, where if you sort of, you gain any kind of like success or attention, or you're able to publish or work or make a living or something in the feminist movement, then people really kind of start to come after you and try to start to destroy you and tear you down and rip you to shreds. I don't know if men do that to each other. Maybe they do, but it seems to be big in feminism, and not just in, you know, our version of feminism, like the women's rights movement, but in liberal feminism too, among the third wavers. And I mean, it would be easy to chalk that up to power, and there not being, people sort of not believing there's enough to go around. But I don't know. I don't think I've ever really developed a full analysis of that phenomenon.
No one's allowed to make any money in feminism. Women aren't allowed to make any money.
Yeah, you have to be poor. Otherwise, people really are going to try to make you poor.
Yeah, you've got no value as a woman in feminism if you make money, except if you make money. Except if you're like proper earning a living, and then you can kind of get away with calling yourself a feminist, not even being one. I mean, did you see, like recently we had, what really intrigues me about this movement is recently there was a crowdfunder by Fair Play for Women. And what they were raising money for was to, well, I don't really know. I think the idea was that you had to be legally female to call yourself female. Now, as far as I'm concerned, once we talk about being a legal female, we then have eradicated the idea of biology from being female, because then a man can be female. So I don't know why anybody was fighting for that. I sort of say it's like asking for, it's like saying I'm thirsty and someone giving you a thimble of water, right? What's the point? But they raised £100,000 in a week or so. At the same time, there were some refugees being defunded in Scotland. Now, they were trans-inclusive refugees. So I do have an issue with that anyway, because I think, well, you already gave it away before they defunded you. But then because they didn't involve men, like actual men that called themselves men, as opposed to men that called themselves women, they got defunded. They only raised about £400 at the same time. So there's so many inconsistencies within this particular ideology of women centering, supposed kind of feminism, women centering, that doesn't feel that honest anyway. That I don't know where I'm going with that, but it was just very interesting at the same time. And sometimes when men have put crowdfunders up for things that I think, well, I'm not actually sure that is something that this same group of women should be putting their hands in their pockets for. Women haven't had quite as much fast cash. So it's the money situation is really interesting. And it can't be a left thing, because a lot of people on the left who call themselves true leftists are sort of living in massive houses.
Oh, I mean, all of the socialists, all of the people who represent the left now, in Canada anyway, I shouldn't speak for other countries, but are at least middle class. And the reason that they're so willing to go along with such nonsense dogma around, trans women are women and sex work is work and all that stuff is maybe just because they don't care that much, but really just because they're trying to keep their well-paying jobs, right? They're trying to keep their secure positions in governments or for the unions or whatever. They're not grassroots activists. Maybe they were at some point, but so much of that is about maintaining their income as well as their status.
Yeah, totally. It's weird though, isn't it? It's weird that people can't see it. I kind of felt once I'd gone through this sort of and saw the emperor was naked, once I saw that, then I saw loads of naked emperors all over the place. But some people just see the one and can still ignore the sort of 500 other massive, great big naked elephant emperors in the room. It's odd.
So what do you think about who to ally with and who not to? I don't know that ally is the right word. I tend to, because that word gets conflated with like take money from or do an event with, as opposed to work with or, form a coalition with. But I mean, a lot of people will say, obviously, there's this big debate around allying with the right, which again, never makes that much sense because often people who are called right wing are not necessarily right wing. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with right wing people. But, I do tend to I don't think you should just work with just anybody. And I don't think that you should ally with just anyone or form coalitions with. I am pretty open and flexible in terms of who I'll talk to. And that has something to do with my work because I interview people. So if I interview somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean that I like them or I agree with them or I'm signing on to all of their beliefs. It just means I'm interested to hear what they have to say. But, there's definitely like women in this movement, whatever you want to call it, who don't seem to mind working with, sharing platforms with, promoting, allying with men who, are sketchy, who are abusive, who just like they don't know, who like came out of nowhere. And it's like, wait, why are you working with this dude? Like he seems like a weirdo to me. You don't know him. Like there's plenty of women that you could work with. What are you doing with this guy? I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but maybe you can sort of help me out a bit.
I've stopped actually caring about what other people think about what I do and who I talk to and who I work with and who I work alongside, who I stand next to, who I occasionally sneeze with. I really can't be. I don't have time to check with everybody to see if it's an okay thing to do, and because of that, I think what I do is a little more. if I find someone sketchy, I'm not going to work with them. Even if everybody else thinks they're an amazing human, I'm just not going to do it. But if I come across someone who everyone else says is sketchy, but I meet them and I don't think they are, then I'll work with them. I watched a really interesting clip of this man. It was like a promotional video. It was something that came on after one of mine or something. And he sort of said, I'm too busy executing what I want to do to worry about whether or not people like the way I execute it. And I just thought I quite like that. I have a really clear idea about what I want to achieve, or what I had wanted to achieve. So what I wanted to achieve was I wanted everyone to understand what was going on. I wanted everyone to know that we were cutting the breasts off teenage girls, and that women were losing our spaces, our rights, and our language, and we didn't have free speech. I wanted all of those things to be raised into the public consciousness. And now I want to do something more tangible, because I think that, well, I haven't achieved what I wanted to do, but more people know about it than they knew about it before because of some of the things I've done. But now I want to direct women's attention to something really solid where they feel they can achieve something, and look upon it. So I'm going back to the refuge and building and just starting again from the ground up about what feminism, feminism started for the most vulnerable women. And so now, now I've got feminism, which is like feminism, but less feminine and more female. And so that's going to be a different kind of thing where we do go back to basics. And then I sort of described it. I have to visualize stuff like this. And I just feel that it's a load of women pooling our resources and our brains and linking arms around the most vulnerable women. And then once we've done that and we've saved those women and we've protected them, then we just step out, and eventually everybody's within this sort of linking arms thing, which sounds really woolly, and it's nothing like my personality to visualize it like that. But just then bringing more people in, because if you can say to someone, these really vulnerable women here need women only space, and everybody starts to understand exactly why that is, then why doesn't my daughter deserve female only space at school and when she walks about her life, when she needs female only space? Why doesn't an elderly woman who's going into hospital, why doesn't she deserve a female only ward? Because unlike Canada, you probably have a lot of single room occupancy or small wards. We still have wards with like 8 beds on it.
Okay.
Anyway, I went off as a tangent, so I do.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I brought you here to talk, so why are you talking so much, Posey? Thank you, Peace Love Goddess. I really appreciate that generous donation. Someone asks, Kelly, was your husband on board from the beginning?
Yeah. He doesn't really have it. He did say at one point, it's really absorbing all of your time, which it was. So I went from kind of not doing very much to doing this all the time. So as soon as the kids go to bed, I come out. As soon as the kids go to school, I'm here. Most of my weekend, this is what I do. And he just said, I said, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And he said, well, someone else will do it. And I went, there's no one else is going to do this. I mean, I don't mean nobody else is going to stand up for women, but nobody else is going to occupy this particular position that I've got. The same as there's not another Meghan Murphy. There's not another woman in Canada that spent the last, or now in Mexico, who spent the last 10 years like doing this magazine, right? That piqued people and turned some people I know onto feminism. There's not going to be another one of those. So there's not going to be some mouthy, relatively brash woman who will just talk to anybody and isn't beholden to the left. There isn't another. I'm just fabulously unique. And so
you are. Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? You sort of think, well,
I like a confident woman.
But we could all say, if not me, then who? We all.
Well, why did we do this? We did this because we had to, and because no one else was doing it. I mean, I think that you're probably like me a little. I mean, I just can't not say something, you know, if I think something wrong is happening or something dangerous, or even if I just think something is not true or irrational, like I want to say something about it. I want to talk about it. I can't just go along. I don't have that chip in me that allows me to do that. But also, I mean, in Canada, look, no one else was saying anything.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson was saying loads of stuff.
Oh, him. Right, I'd forgotten all about him.
Do you know
he flew right under the radar?
Do you know he spoke at Bill C-16 just like you? Did you know?
Oh. No, I missed that. I had forgotten all about it.
He's never mentioned it. He's never talked about
He's
that.
never mentioned it. I mean, everyone just thinks I whine all the time, so I'm sort of wary of whining, but I obviously can't help it. But yeah, I heard him on a podcast. You know, and I stuck up for him. I totally stuck up for him. I'll continue to stick up for him. I don't not stick up for people because they do things that piss me off if I think they're worth sticking up for. I think he says a lot of very interesting things. When he was on the CBC, he was, you know, treated so badly by the host, and I was just livid, and I tweeted at her, and I was like, you know, you're totally misrepresenting him. You're being totally unfair. This is so unethical. And I guess I feel pissed off because, you know, he mentions his stuff around Bill C-16, and I always say, oh, you know, Jordan Peterson was there, like Gad Saad was there, Hilla Kerner was there, but he can't bring himself to mention that anyone else was there except for him, or that anyone else said anything.
But then that's probably why he's got the biggest career, because I mean, I don't know what his ego's like. I don't know. I'm imagining it's not particularly small. And so, you know, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to have a big ego, right? He wrote, I bought his book myself. I went to see him speak. I hadn't realized it was going to be quite so much content sort of relating to the Bible, and I was really tired, and I thought, I've spent so much on this ticket, I can't fall asleep. But yeah, you know, and also what he was speaking to is a load of men that kind of felt misguided, and I do think men put their hands in their pockets a little bit more. That's why most men on YouTube, whether they're phenomenal or not, if they say, and most of them say quite sketchy things about women, I think. I don't know if I listen to any particular YouTuber that doesn't say some things about women that make me a bit but you know, men put their hands in their pockets a little bit more for these little hobby things that they like.
Yeah, well, I mean, men like to talk a lot about feminism and a lot about women, and often they really have no idea what they're talking about. And so, and they really are quite certain that they do know what they're talking about. You know, a lot of these guys that I sort of started engaging with more once I got kicked off of Twitter, I guess those would have been the intellectual dark web men, who I like them all very much. They're very intelligent and they have a lot of really interesting things to say, but they really don't understand feminism. They don't really understand the women's movement, because what they see is just academic feminism. So they see postmodernism, they see queer theory, they see gender studies, they see third wave garbage on the internet, but then I think they've totally forgotten, or they aren't aware of what happened during the first wave and second wave, and that, you know, there's a lot of feminists who aren't engaged in nonsense. And I agree with a lot of their criticisms.
And who can blame them? I mean, if I'd never been engaged in any sort of feminist groups, I think that feminism was about trans inclusive, penis kind of centering stuff.
And just like nonsense Instagram memes and like fat positivity and like, yeah, you take your clothes off, you sexy girl. Oh, you are. Well, you are now. No, now that you're fat. Maybe I should get on board too.
Yeah, come on, join us.
Is this sexy? Do you like it? You have to now. It's bigotry if you don't.
Oh dear. Crazy stuff.
Nicole says, can you talk about what mothers mean to the feminist movement and the important role that plays with fatherhood?
You love this topic, don't you, Meghan?
Oh boy, do I ever have so much to say about motherhood.
Look, I'll put it in a nutshell. I'll put it in a nutshell. Not even feminist movement, but just generally speaking, right? If we're talking about women's rights, and we live in this world that we live in, that basically you need money, right? You need money to get by. You need money to eat. How do we square the circle that is women need money to have children to eat, but also apparently we need to be fully independent, have our independent finances, not rely on a man or the state to have our children? I mean, what are they living on? Is it air? There's no solution to this.
Well, and how do you if you have some really great career that pays you a lot, then you don't have time to be a mother.
Yeah, right. Or you don't want to, or you do, and you pay a woman a low wage to raise your kids. It's it's impossible. And then obviously you can't talk about the fact that kids do need their dads, their actual fathers. Not if their fathers are abusive. I think we're all okay with those men not having access to children. But I do think it's a child's right to know where they came from, to have connections with their biological parents, both of them, particularly their mothers. And I don't buy this nonsense that men can be as good mothers as mothers. And I don't mean that whole trans thing. I just mean people are like, oh, well, my husband's just as good at raising my children as I do. And I just think, well, can he breastfeed? No, he can't. Does he? It just a whole range of things. But my kids are really lucky. There's two very different personalities and different same value systems, slightly different ideas about risk, about a whole host of things. So that's where I am. I find it really interesting when women go, oh, you should make yourself independent. You're like, who can afford to do that and have kids?
Yeah, it's true. It's sort of impossible. I mean, it's a good idea to be financially independent because you don't want to be financially dependent on a man who might screw you over, which has obviously happened to lots of women. But
yeah, that's why you marry them.
I don't know what the solution is.
In this country,
then you're stuck with them.
Yeah, but then you can divorce. I'm not saying that that's a great way of living, but and I'm not saying that women should put up with bad marriages, or men for that matter. I'm not saying people should stay in a bad, unhappy marriages, but I do think there is this. I'm a paid up member of a monogamous relationship, right? I think they work if they're the right people. I think they work, but you also have to work at them. So it's not plain sailing. I was a long time ago. I was on a program called Blind Date, which is like a TV show back in the.
How long ago? When?
Oh, when I was 18.
Can we see it?
Like 93. Oh, I have a VHS recording of it. And there was an old couple, and someone asked them how their marriage had lasted so long. So how his marriage, because he was obviously on there to meet somebody else. So he'd been married for something like 50 years to his wife. And they'd said, what was the secret of your marriage? And he said, we never fell out of love at the same time, which I kind of think is probably, I mean, I've yet to fall out of love with my husband, but it's been close. But I'm sure he has all the time because I'm a pig in nightmare. But there's this thing where people think everything should be easy, and things aren't easy. Life's not supposed to be easy. Otherwise, what's the purpose?
It's true. I think that women get so much bad advice, especially from the internet, but maybe prior in like self-help books or something like that, where it's like, if it doesn't feel good, you should just leave. If it doesn't feel good, if it's not serving you, you should cut them off. And I'm like, what? Like, what a crazy thing to, like, everything is supposed to serve you, otherwise you cut them off. Like, do you have any relationships with anybody, including family, friends, never mind a partner? It's like, all relationships are really hard to maintain. Never mind if it's someone you live in the same house with and you're trying to raise kids with.
Yeah.
I'm imagining.
Well, but I think as well, people expect everything to be sunshine and roses. And I also think I don't know if this is just women, but I'm going to say this is just women. I see people, so I'm in this perimenopause, menopause Facebook group, and you'll see women literally, oh, I can't believe it. I've come downstairs and the dog's weed in front of the fridge. And my husband's obviously been in and he's got himself a drink and everything. And he's clearly just left it. And then his drink's kind of on the side. And it just really annoys me. And then everyone's gone, oh, what do you, and she's like, I've cleared it up. And I was like, well, that's why, there you go. Don't
do it.
Just don't.
It drives me
crazy about it.
I know. I can't stand it. The complaining, it's this passive aggressive thing again, right? I know. I hear that from lots of women too. It's like, and then I'm picking up all of his dirty clothes off the floor. I'm like, don't pick them up. Don't pick them up and then complain about it and hate him over it. Don't pick them up. They're his clothes. Let him pick. Like, why do you like? I have to. You're like this martyr shit, right?
Well, they've got a life doing it. Nobody wakes up in a 20 or 10-year marriage and it's all new, right? That's not a new thing. You don't wake up and you've been treated, and I'm not talking about abuse. I'm just talking about lazy kind of attitudes towards each other. But that doesn't happen overnight. That happens with every time you accept that sort of behavior, you invite it to happen again.
And they show you that behavior very early on, like very early on in dating. I mean, it's taken me a long time to figure this out. So, you know, in a lot of ways, I sort of feel lucky that I'm still not settled down with one person, because I've learned a lot over the years about red flags that I did not know when I was in my 20s. Like, there was a lot that I missed back then, and I don't know how to really resolve that for women, because it seems as though some women who are that age do see red flags and do, you know, choose well. And some women have to sort of learn it through experience, or, you know, the hard way, they might say.
I said this and got accused of victim blaming by loads of women for saying we should. It's on a thread. In fact, it's often shared on Twitter as in, look, she victim blames women who are in violent relationships, and it's a cut. It's all my comments cut and nobody else's. So it just looks like I'm saying all these things. And I say that I think it's really important that we teach women what their boundaries are, and that when something doesn't feel comfortable, then they listen to that rather than explain it away. So I often talk about Gavin de Beck, who wrote The Gift of Fear. And he talks about, there's a woman, she parks her car. She goes to the cinema with her daughter. She parks her car so they can have a bit of a walk because it's a nice evening. She goes to this sort of women and mother and daughter cinema night. And when she's at sort of getting popcorn or tickets or whatever, there's a guy who stands next to her and sort of makes small talk like, oh, is this a mother and daughter's thing? Oh, that looks so fun. And all of her senses are like, oh, he's quite dodgy, but she ignores them. She's really polite. She probably tells him a little bit too much about herself. They watch the movie. When she's walking to her car, he's following. She ends up running. He ends up trying to get her. She gets in her car. She's got the keys ready and everything. And then she drives away, and she has this sort of moment where she goes into panic rage or whatever. And I think she stabbed him in the eye with a key, and that's how she's got away, or stabbed him in the face because there's blood on her hands and everything. And he talks about the fact that what she did when she felt uneasy with this guy is she rationalized all of those fears and made them her issue and didn't listen to those things. And I'm not saying that we're all going to be in a situation where a guy's running through a car park chasing us, but we must know that minute, that maybe a boyfriend says something that's a little bit kind of demeaning or just unnecessarily poisonous. And at that point, you have a choice. You either raise that into an argument and say, what you're doing, why are you talking to me like that? Or you take that with you and you think, actually, I'm not putting up with that. Or you go home and go, he was quite tired. And I think he was just doing this. And it becomes that you just spend your life excusing to yourself why you're being treated like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of the problem though is that other people convince you to do that. Like I'm starting to feel like I'm picking on women a lot, so I apologize. But no, I've picked on men in this live stream also, so I think
And
I'm
we are
picking on
women.
everyone fairly. So we're allowed.
Mm.
We're the only ones that are allowed to. We identify as women, therefore we have the right to pick on women.
I mean, out of all the women, we're the only ones allowed.
Even better. But you know, like, because women have told me, like my women friends, like I'll be like, you know, this guy who I'm seeing or whatever, like he did this and I don't like it, like I don't think it's cool, and they're like, oh, but you know, he's had a hard time, like he's stressed at work, or he has, you know, childhood trauma, or you know, just you know, give him another chance, and I'm like, what, like until when? And like we all have problems. I have problems. Like I have like traumatic things in my past. Like I have, you know, I have some flaws, like not that many anymore. But there's probably like a few here and there. And you know, I still don't say cruel things to people to be cruel. And so, you know, you sort of mentioned this before, but yeah, like if a man says something mean to you specifically to be mean, like if somebody is trying to hurt you, that's really messed up. And I know that I don't do that to people. You know, I'm sure I've said things that have hurt people's feelings either unintentionally or just because you're being honest or you're criticizing them or disagreeing with them. But I would never say something intentionally to make somebody feel bad or just make something up to make someone feel bad. And men have done that to me. And then I've had friends sort of be like, oh, but he loves you a lot. Oh, but you know, he always pays for stuff. Oh, but he's so nice. And it's like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why do I have to, like, you think it's better to stay with this guy who, you know, acts like an asshole when he gets angry because he can't be bothered to behave, you know, responsibly or like an adult, or he doesn't care to, or he doesn't know how to, or whatever. But, you know, it's not only that some women are sort of maybe missing that chip. Some women do seem to be missing the chip around seeing red flags. And that's, you know, there's probably a variety of reasons for that. Partly maybe that was what was modeled to them in their family or something like that. But it's also that other people will make you feel like you're being too harsh if you set a boundary around that, or if you won't tolerate it.
Yeah, I just when I talked about this before and I said, oh, we should empower women to recognize the signs, people were like, well, it's not that simple. I said, well, actually, I think it is. I think it is really quite simple. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. I'm just saying it's a simple objective, that rather than wait until somebody's been beaten the hell out of and we try and rescue them and get them to leave, how about they just don't experience that in the beginning, because they have enough outside of this relationship. They have enough going on in their lives that this isn't the only thing that's going on.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that's a major factor. If I'm understanding you correctly, like it's like women who have nothing going on in their lives. They don't have a strong social circle. You know, they don't have a strong network. They don't have, you know, hobbies or outside activities. So all they have is just this guy and this male attention. And then you become so reliant and dependent on this guy, and you feel like you can't step away, because where do you go?
He's your only measure of value about who you are and how desirable you are is him. One of the things that came up from the Sarah Everard vigil and quite grotesque protest, but one of the things that came up when we were talking about women and safety, because actually what happened to her was really rare. It's not like many of us are going to walk home and get kidnapped, even though that might be most of our most terrifying fear. It's not really going to happen to us. It's all the other stuff that happens. And when we talk about male violence or the way women are treated, I just don't think women spend enough time with each other where they can where they mix with older generations. I think that's really important. If you're a young woman in an office and there's older women and you moan about your boyfriend, an older woman will just tell you how it is, right? They'll just be like, well, he's doing that because he's probably cheating on you, or he's doing that because he's not very nice. Don't stick around with that. We've all been there, done that. Don't do that. So one of the things that we hope will happen after the refuge is that we then start these women's centres where women of all ages can come together, whether it's learning craft. I mean, people even poo-poo the idea that women are doing craft instead of, I don't know, building a wall. But there's something about females where we've sort of lost this idea that actually being a woman is really quite great, with or without having a male partner.
Yeah, and it's funny because actually earlier on in this chat, somebody asked the questions. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was like, okay, so considering all this, like, honestly, would you guys rather be men? It's like, I don't think so. I don't want to be the one to fight off a bear or have to build something.
I love being a woman. I really, really.
I'm happy.
Well, when I was a little girl, we had both a queen and we had a female prime minister. And so I was definitely very lucky that I thought I could do anything. I mean, that was patently untrue, but it didn't feel like there was a limit on being a woman. Plus, I get to be a woman. And I didn't ever have really terribly painful periods. I wasn't really embarrassed about puberty. I mean, I was a little bit, but I quite enjoyed it.
Oh, I was very sad about not having breasts for a very long time. I did get them eventually, but my puberty came very slowly, and that's
because you're tall.
Frustrating.
Tall
girls.
I
was tall and thin.
But because you're tall, so tall girls go through puberty late because actually your puberty stops you growing. So as girls, you're not going to grow much more after the sort of last bit of your puberty. So that's why tall girls do generally go through all of that later. So I went through puberty at 10.
Oh, Lord.
And I'm 5'1".
I mean,
when I was right.
When I was a kid, we were lucky because, like, I was a kid in the 90s and
show off.
No, well, in the 80s too. You're not that much older than me, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm 47 in about 2 months.
Oh, okay. So you're way older than me.
Hello.
Wow. You're right. We can't relate at all. I'm still over here trying to pretend to be like 29. So, I'm hearing an echo over there. Is anybody else hearing that? Maybe it's just me. But when I was a kid, I had a nightgown that said, anything boys can do, girls can do better. And I was always told by my mother that I could do whatever I wanted to do and be whoever I wanted to be. And I played with trucks and Lego and blocks, and I wore pants, and I hated pink. And I didn't want to do girl things, and it was fine. I felt great about all of that. I never felt like there's anything wrong with me. So now we've gone way, way, way backwards, and any girl who was, like me or whatever is going to believe there is something wrong with them and that they need to fix it.
See, I did both. So I really liked dolls. Really, really liked dolls. But I also had a garage and cars and was obsessed with cars because my dad liked cars. Not that we had one until I was about 5. But I loved cars. I could name all the classic cars and all the sports cars. But I also had a Cindy, which is like a much nicer version of a Barbie. I don't know if you had Cindy in Canada.
We had Barbie.
Did you have
Cindy? No, I don't know who Cindy is.
Cindy
I'm
was a
sorry.
little bit, she looked more like a girl and less like a stripper.
Yeah.
She didn't have a tiny, tiny waist. She didn't have
My
really
Barbie,
white breasts.
I used to make my Barbie, this when I was a bit older, but my Barbie was such a slut. My Barbie was like, I mean, I was about to say they look like sluts. Don't they? But I used to make her wear her tube top as a mini skirt. And then she would always like I don't even want to tell you this. I feel like you're going to judge me. I'm trying to remember how old I would have been, 11 or 12.
17.
She would have like sexy encounters with her boss when she was working as a secretary. I don't even know where I learned this stuff because we didn't have cable and we weren't really allowed to watch very much. But obviously, I got this from somewhere. It's one of those 80s movies.
My Cindy had she had a house.
You're like, anyway.
Well, we didn't have boys. We just had Action Man, which is like G.I. Joe. So my cousin had Action Man. But Cindy had a yellow bathroom. Not everything was pink. Her Range Rover, which I saved up for, was red. She had a horse and carriage. That's all I spent all of my pocket money on. But I also climbed trees. But I also had long golden. I had hair like yours, long golden sort of ringlets, and thought I was absolutely the bee's knees. So I did everything. So I think it was so liberating. Well,
to be fair,
I might have been precocious. Maybe. Small chance. I did a lot of musicals.
I mean, so what you're saying, I used to really like musicals too. I used to, I really liked the Peter Pan musical when I was a kid. And so my mom made me like a Peter Pan outfit and I would want to play the role of Peter Pan, obviously. And so I spent like so much of my childhood trying to force my sister to play all the other parts and she hated it. And every time anyone came over, I wanted to perform Peter Pan. And my sister was like, ugh.
We used to make my cousins, who one of them went in sort of the paramilitary, which is like the army hard guys. We used to make them do dances and we do routines when they came over, and we'd sort of be walking around the kitchen to Paul McCartney's "I Light a Candle" and do. I won't sing the song, but I was in loads of musicals. So I played Ado Annie in Oklahoma and Maria in West Side Story, and did all that sort of stuff. I could reach all the notes.
You guys, we went to karaoke together when we were in New York before the lockdown. And Posey dominated as to the point where when other people like me tried to join in, she was like, this is me.
I was so drunk. Shut up. Oh my God. That was that great photograph where you're giving me wine on your knees. And I think we went to bed about 6.
Probably.
So drunk. I was like, now sing this one. And I just couldn't. Oh my God. That was great. That was so great.
I was going to say about your childhood, though, that what I'm getting from this is like, you can be more than one thing. It's like, you can be a girl who plays with blocks and really likes cars and wears pants and climbs trees, but also likes dolls and has long hair. Like, we've become so rigid in our thinking around gender. Like, it's just incredible. I mean, you and I talk about it all the time. So I don't know, we sort of used to it. But if you think about the change that's happened over the past, 30 years?
Well, I think one of the main things that happened when I was a kid is more commercial TV and advertising to kids. So I think that changed somewhat, because then if you can make 2 markets for one toy by boy and girl, then it's very different. I remember shopping for my children. And if you went to one of the sort of kids superstores like a Mothercare, which would have maternity clothes, pushchairs, prams, baby clothes, and that sort of stuff, but then toys, you'd get a pink phone or you get a blue phone, or you get a pink till or you get a blue till. And when I was a little girl, the cash register would look like the cash register kind of in a shop. It wouldn't be pink or blue. But as soon as they sort of found that they could make pink plastic, I think that was the death of just kind of toys. You know, I had a silver kettle. I didn't have a pink kettle.
Right. Well, and toys for girls got a lot sexier, like more so even than the Barbie dolls, right?
Did you ever see those dolls that you dip in water and then they reveal the sort of sexy kinkster underwear? That quite recent. It was on.
No,
It was on
I heard
Twitter.
about that a little bit.
Went a bit viral. Very odd. Very odd.
This is, sorry to change the subject, I just want to get through some of the super chats. So somebody, Westy40 says, in terms of being an ally, the reality is, at least in the US, it's only Republicans trying to hold the line on sex-based rights, except on abortion. Free speech. Democrats have abandoned feminism / free speech. It's over. I mean, that's pretty true in Canada, although to less of an extreme extent, because our right and left are not as polarized as not that the Democrats are left, but less polarized than they are in the US. You know, like our conservatives are not nearly as right wing as the Republicans are, is what I mean to say.
Well, our right wing is not as right wing as the Democrats, to be fair.
Right.
You know, people talk about the Democrats being left, but they're not particularly left. I mean, there's not a single person that ever talks about maternity rights in the US. I find it quite staggering. I remember going there in 2015 and took my kids to Disney, and there was a really heavily pregnant woman standing, it must have been for hours in the boiling hot heat, letting people through in this line. And I said to her, why aren't you on maternity leave? Like, she looked about 8 months pregnant. And I said, why aren't you on maternity leave, or at least not standing up all day? And she said, oh, we get 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, I suppose that this Westy person's point is that, you know, who do you ally with if you can't ally with the right? Like if you're, I don't know. I don't understand why we're supposed to be stuck with the left. I mean, the left are terrible. They've proven they're never going to help us out with anything.
But I sort of think those people that tell you not to ally, which are left-wing women in our movement, I just think, what do you want us to fail? Is that what you're saying? You want us to fail? You'll ally with someone who is pro-prostitution because they're on the left and thinks that women have penises, but you don't want us to ally with somebody who, you know, I don't agree, right, with restricting abortion. But I also don't agree that you should be able to have an abortion at 8 months. So my views have changed about that as time's gone on. So I do think there comes a point where that life is a baby, but not if the mother's life is at risk. But I do think at 6 months, if you can give birth to a live child, I think it would be. I just feel uncomfortable.
Well, the idea that the end all be all of the conversation on women's rights is abortion is crazy. Like all these women who are demanding that, you know, you have to vote for Biden or else you're not a feminist, or you hate women, or you're a racist, or whatever. I mean, it's totally ridiculous and oversimplified, obviously, because they
made abortion big business, right? The Democrats made abortion big business and closed small centers, so only Planned Parenthood really has any grip on abortion rights. And they're awful.
Well, and the idea that, I mean, this is a long, more complicated conversation, and I'd meant to talk about this with Mary Lou Singleton when I had her on, so I'll talk to her about it again.
Fine. But she's instead of frivolous
No, well, you can talk about it. I meant I wasn't going to be able to explain it properly. Like, oh, it's too bad I don't have somebody else on right now.
Oh, damn.
But, you know, like, it's like the idea that women should have to even depend on the state for abortion rights is the wrong way to look at it, because they shouldn't have to. And there's an issue that a lot of feminists fail to realize or talk about, which is that, you know, this is what midwives did and were for many years ago, before they criminalized midwifery and decided that it was only the medical industry that was permitted to dictate what you could and could not do to your body, and we continue to hand over power to them, right? And we don't need to do that. We don't need to vote just based on abortion rights. We don't need to at all. We could sort of opt out of that whole conversation. And again, I'm oversimplifying, so don't yell at me, everybody. But
well, I said to my husband years ago, right? I was stood in the kitchen, and this was when I was first, like 2015. And I just said to him, because I'm such a prophet, and I said to him, do you know, I think two things. I think number one, I think we're going to have to abandon feminism to save women. And number two, I think it will come down to, for some people, abortion versus being able to say what a woman is. And for me, it's being able to say what a woman is. Because without that, there is no other rights that we possibly can have. But I'm sure you did too. You could feel it a long time ago that actually it was either especially in America, that's what it comes down to. In the UK, not so much, because there isn't really a big movement of people that want to stop women having access to safe and necessary terminations.
Is in Canada neither? I've never really even talked about abortion all that much because there was really never any need to. There's just not a real threat to our abortion rights in Canada the way that there is in the US. But I mean, we should be having an entirely different conversation. But I mean, you're right. I mean, if we can't say what a woman is, then there's no such thing as women's rights. If we can't even say women are the only ones who need abortions and get pregnant, then how is this a woman's right, and how is this feminism, and what are you even talking about? I mean,
it's so I listened to this Radio 4 thing today, and I think it just is the same as everything else that we talk about women's rights and women's safety and women all that stuff, and the same people that will talk about that will be the sort of people that say trans women are women.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, what are you talking about? What is everyone bothering to why bother even saying it?
Yeah. So who is being attacked or raped and killed by whom? Well, and if you can't say who that is, like who it's happening to, who's doing it, people on people violence, then.
Well, the women that annoy me the most are those that have made an absolute fortune from feminism, who still sort of try and straddle both ponds, and I just think shame on you. There's a podcast by Adam Buxton. It's a very good podcast. He's like quite a funny guy, and he interviews loads of celebrities, and he's done about 130. And as far as I'm aware, from the probably 40 I've listened to, he's never sort of introduced a guest by saying what they're not going to talk about. And are you familiar with Caitlin Moran?
Yeah.
So he introduced her saying that she wasn't going to talk about J.K. Rowling. And I just thought, that's insane. That she makes so much money for a long time out of feminism, and the most pressing issue for women right now she won't engage with.
Well, and I always wonder if these kinds of women, in the US, it's all the Jessica Valenti's and the Roxane Gays and the Sadie Doyles and all those people. I mean, maybe not them, but who else? What is her name? Rebecca Traister. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them who are like, they make I think I told you at some point, like Jessica Valenti, I think charges like 20 grand for her speaking fee.
I don't even know who she
do. Roxane. She's very dull. But these women get crazy book deals. They make crazy money off of feminism. They position themselves as these very brave and courageous women. They're always getting attacked by the right wing over abortion. And like, they won't touch this issue. And I sort of always wonder, like, once it's sort of over with, once it's all said and done, then they'll come out and tepidly be like, Oh yeah, women's rights, after they let the rest of us, be thrown under the bus and go through hell. And I suspect that they'll never admit that they were on the wrong side, or just that they refused to say something, not even just being on the wrong side, but just refusing to say anything. You have all this money and all this power and all these Twitter followers and all these book deals and, TV deals in some case. And and Anita Sarkeesian, like, people, it's like, and you refuse to. I don't know if they're not intelligent, or like, I don't know if they really truly don't get it, like if they really truly believe that it's possible for a man to become a woman if he says so, or it's just all about the money and the
It's all about the money.
connections.
It's all about the money, and it's also about, do I want to step into this huge bloody fight? And some people don't want to step into it. Caitlin Moran is thinking, do I want to tell all the women what it's like to be menopausal? Do I want to get this book out and sell a book and make a fortune? Or do I want to defend women's rights? And she went with the former. And I was going to say I don't blame her, but I really do think the women that haven't charged into this, knowing that so many are just being absolutely castigated and abused. I don't know. Can you really say you care about women and women's rights and then not speak up at this time? It's odd, isn't it? It's like the woman. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's like the woman I interviewed. So I'm interviewing this woman about these refugees that have just lost all their funding. And then she just slips in about trans women, which I know I've already mentioned. But she slips in about the trans women. And I just thought, what went through your head when you decided to let them in? Like, why are you saying this? Why are you taking great pains to talk about this when, A, I've now lost a lot of respect for you, and B, what about your service users? Like, why bother working in a refuge and building up a refuge if there's blokes in it, no matter how they identify? And recently, a friend of mine got in touch from school, who I haven't seen for quite some time. And she spent 4 years in a refuge. And she just said if somebody had moved in there who was a bloke, that would have totally messed up with her recovery.
Of course. I mean, I think, I don't know this woman, but I assume she just thinks she has to. It's like, this is what you do. This is what you have to say. You have to pay lip service. Maybe she believes it won't harm the women who use her services. I don't know how she could think that, but
when did this even start? Like, who was the first? How on earth did that happen? I mean, I think I know how it happens. It happens because we call these men trans women, and therefore this sort of linguistic trick means that you then call them women. So then when a trans woman comes to a women's only shelter, why wouldn't you let that trans woman in?
Right. That is the main problem, is that people have decided that they're going to go along with this idea that there's such a thing as a trans woman, and that this is like a legitimate concept, and that, as we mentioned earlier, that there's some separate category. And that's what so many of these men, some women too, who have taken up the gender identity debate, sort of when it was a little safer to dip their toes in, and are going along with this language like cis, and the idea that there's such a thing as a trans kid. Some kids really are trans, and we need to help them be their true selves. Most aren't, and we don't want to make mistakes. And the idea that there really is such a thing as transgenderism, and there's not. Obviously this video is demonetized, so whatever. But I don't know how to not say what I want to say. I don't think I'm capable of it. But and it is, and they don't get why that's a problem. You know, they think they're making critiques about, you know, well, you know, this isn't good for women's sports. Like, we need to protect women's sports. And, you know, it's not good to put men in prisons with women. And, you know, we shouldn't be just telling kids that they should go on hormones and that that's reversible. And there's too many of them going on hormones. But at the same time, they're legitimizing this concept and category. And so when, you know, and I'm not able to finish my sentence, so you do it.
Well, I keep saying, I'll tell you what else I keep saying, which I think is related, is I keep seeing people talking about the harm to children. And then one of the people they will put on a panel or interview about why it's harmful to children is someone who's trans identified as an adult. So whether it's a trans identified male, so whether it's someone like Debbie Hayton or the woman, Scott, can't remember her name, who is trans, who had loads of really complicated, terrible surgeries. And I'm just like, come on, this is so incoherent. So you're saying not for kids, but I really do think it's possible for adults. Well, the reason these kids are being transitioned is because the adults want to justify what they're doing. There is no such thing as being born in the wrong body. There is such a thing that somebody will have surgeries to try and present themselves as the opposite sex, and it makes their life easier. Now, it might make their life easier for 5 minutes. It might not actually be a solution at all and make their life much harder because it will never be whatever they think it is. Or it actually might make them kind of happier on their day-to-day until they die. But that doesn't mean that they're genuinely trans, as if, right, like we said, as if it's a something. So I do find it really interesting, especially when sort of groups that are parents and they still promote these very dangerous individuals, because you think without that individual there promoting their own happy or often not transition to kids, that's actually a bad thing for your children to see. That's one of the reasons your child is doing this.
I mean, I just, like, I've always said, you know, like, I'm not going to try to stop adults from having cosmetic surgeries if they want to do that. You know, I'm not trying to stop women from doing that. I mean, I would discourage people from having dangerous surgeries and, you know, getting all of the information that you can and really understanding what you're getting into and understanding that it's unlikely that this is going to resolve whatever issues you're having around your body image or your mental health issues or whatever. But if you want to do that, go for it. It's your body. You can do what you want. You can pay for it. But that's not the same. And, you know, and I think there are some people who have, I don't like the term gender dysphoria because I don't think it makes any sense. Because, I mean, everybody probably has some version of gender dysphoria in that case. You know, like, I'm not always feminine. It doesn't really confuse me in any way or trouble me. But like, if somebody has this mental condition where they feel really strongly that they need to change their body and that's going to make them feel happier, then okay, you can go ahead and do that. But that doesn't actually mean that there's such a thing as, you know, genuinely being transgender. All you're doing is you're a biological sex, you're male or female, and you're getting a bunch of cosmetic surgeries and you're taking hormones, and maybe you're going to try to present yourself in a way so that you sort of look more like the opposite sex. Maybe it comforts you in some way, but that's not the same thing as you literally are changing sex. And even the sex researchers will do that. Well, no, but you can change your gender. Like, what are you you're a sex researcher. How did you just say you really can change your gender? What
I don't even know how I feel about that. I talked to evolutionary biologists, and both of them seem to suggest, sort of use the language of, I've met loads of trans people that I really like. And I'm like, have you though? Have you met genuine, like, is there such a thing as trans? And I understand that if we start thinking that you can be born in the wrong body, like as an adult, you can make that decision even. And some of those adults will have been homosexual, so then their adult life as a trans person is with someone of the same biological sex as them. isn't that getting into really quite dodgy territory about what homosexuality is? Because I think it is. That's why there's something really odd about attributing masculine or feminine to who you want to have sex with, which I think that often that's what some of this trans stuff is all about, which I know we both know, but it's about a masculine girl who likes girls, therefore is a boy. Therefore, that's kind of almost eradicating the fact that some people are same sex attracted, and that just is a something. But it doesn't need any explanation. I don't care. I think the more research we do into the why about some things, the worse it is for the people that actually that thing impacts.
Right.
Probably too big a thought for this time of night. For me,
it's getting so late for you. I'll let you go. Sorry, everyone. Just so you know, what time is it? It's like, yeah, okay. It's 20 to 1, so pretty late.
Yeah,
I'll let you go
I thought
soon.
it was the wrong time. I thought we were an hour.
Next time we'll start an hour earlier.
I'm all right. I just got no eyes.
Hannah says, how can we make progress going forward when saying a simple statement like, I heart J.K. Rowling or women have periods will immediately get you harassed or reported? It feels like an impossible task.
In my mind, saying it. Do it. Yeah. I think you have to stop worrying about what other people say. And that includes women who talk about guilt by association, because if you start subscribing to guilt by association, then you are doomed to be hoisted by your own petard, undeservedly so. You talked about this earlier, and I would agree with you, is that I make my own assessments about who to associate with and who not to, because otherwise I wouldn't associate with anyone. Like you have to determine who's okay and who's not, and sometimes you screw up and then you don't associate with them anymore. To me, I felt like, there's women who associate with certain people for, I suppose, self-interested reasons, even though these people are clearly sketchy or creepy or whatever. And then, it's also associated with that inability to read red flags, which I find kind of disturbing in adult women, when it's like, can you not see what I see? But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I generally agree with you. It's like, you don't listen to other people about like, oh, don't associate with, I got in so much trouble for associating with Brendan O'Neill. It's like, I like Brendan O'Neill. The devil.
Like, give me a break.
He's a nice guy, though.
He's a really nice guy. And if they talk to him, they'd probably like him too. But they just, see some things that he writes on the internet and decides that he's like this evil guy.
I just find that whole thing really weird, that you would take the view on somebody that somebody else hasn't met, that they say is about this person that you also haven't met, and believe it. It's such a peculiar, oh, don't do that because that person's that. Oh, have you met them?
Somebody's banging on my door.
Quite
it's like some kind of delivery. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to have to leave it.
Go get it. Do you want to get it?
Okay, hold on.
Might be something nice.
Well, he's going to talk for a bit.
Yay! See, doesn't Meghan? I've got Meghan's picture here. So, well, what can I say? I hope it's something fantastic that she's got delivered. I can't see any of your questions either, I don't think. Oh, I can. I can see your questions, so perhaps I'll answer. I had no idea that I could see these questions, and I had this whole private chat thing. So craziness. Well, while while Meghan's not here, I'll plug Standing for Women. So in our shop at the moment, this is so bad. I've got these dog whistles that say adult, human, female. Look, what I talked about with Venice, Jesus Christ, it's because it's 20 to 1, nearly 1:15, and I'm just really tired. But what I talked about with Meghan earlier is changing the way things look for women and what the women's movement looks like. And it looks like a lot of women That's what it looks like. It doesn't look like a lot of women who have read copious amounts of feminist literature. It doesn't look like a lot of women who have academic degrees and privileged lives. It just looks like women, lots of women, all different sorts of women who are coming together just to protect the most vulnerable, which I think is something that women do really, really well. We get together and we make stuff happen. And I've been talking recently about the need for women who I think are really powerful to just get stuff done, not ask permission to do stuff all the time. I'm going to read your comments while she's not here. Is Meghan on board with feminism? I don't know. I don't know if she is. I think she should be. Feminism says, yes, standing for women. I ordered my umbrella and live on the west coast of Trinidad where it rains all the time. Right. So we have these amazing umbrellas. If you join as a Standing for Women member at a rate of £10 or more per month, you get some amazing gifts. And the next one is an umbrella, because what I'm hoping that we do now is we step forward with more out and out action, which will mean meeting in the streets, which will mean talking to each other. In the UK, I'm hoping it will mean gathering in Parliament Square to make a bit of a fuss. I'm hoping to go to a number of places this year. When it comes to, hey, here she is.
My
When it
friends
comes
stop
to free speech. Oh, nice.
I was like, I had like a little accident on the weekend, and they were worried about me, so they stopped by and brought me some cake.
Oh,
okay, finish what you're saying. Sorry. Okay.
No, I was just saying about what I'm doing this year is getting more women out into the public square to actually talk about these things in the flesh. We have a speaker's corner, which is amazing in London. So it's about just public events, which, there's police around in speaker's corner and it's full of men talking about religion, but we're going. So it's going to be full of women.
So how can people, so tell me more about this. In Canada, we call it a transition house. Is that you're raising money for a shelter, a transition house? What is it that you're working on?
Well, I think it's what I'd like it to be is I'd like it to be a really nice therapeutic place where women can heal from violence. But I'm at the real initial stages, not raising any money yet. Want to find out how much money it will cost. I really want it to be, what I would love to see is that I get a house, I get all different females, tradespeople and so on coming to volunteer to do it up. And it becomes a real sort of labor of love for all the women involved. However, I have no expertise in this. And so I would get somebody to run it. I would get somebody to really look after the funding and find out where it goes. And the best thing for everybody. Lots of people have different ideas about where women are best placed to heal. But I just think for biological women, by biological women is where I'm looking at, because like I say, I think that's how women's movements have worked before. They sort of started with this small, really looking after those who need it most. And on the basis of that, just building out, which is how I see it.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you're doing this. Before I let you go, do you want to talk about Meghan Markle?
We can have a quick chat about Meghan Markle.
Okay, give me 1 minute because I just realized that I locked my dog outside when I went to get my cake. I could hear her whining. I'm like, oh crap. Hold on, I'll be back.
You do that. I don't even know if I should speak while Meghan's not here. I don't know if you know this, but in the United Kingdom, according to preliminary research, aside from Naya, there aren't really any biological women's houses. Can I just lock this door 1 second and you can You can
Yeah.
talk to your people.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay, so, well, actually, before I was about to start talking about Meghan Markle, but I'll wait until Posey gets back because I actually do have an opinion. I almost got all the way through the Oprah special. It was very difficult. It took me like 3 nights to work my way through because it was so irritating. And I felt like I just had the completely different reaction than everybody on Twitter had. Which is like, poor Meghan. Emma, please stop whining. I mean, I also couldn't care less about Meghan Markle, Leslie. That's why I didn't watch for so long. I was like, I don't care about the royals at all. I've never cared about the royals. This doesn't interest me. I barely even know who Meghan Markle is. But everyone on the internet was talking about it, so I thought that I should at least figure out what they were talking about. And once I watched it, I did develop an opinion, which I'll wait on until Posey gets back. Do you guys want to know what happened to me on the weekend? I had an accident with a golf cart.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
So I have some more injuries that I won't show right now. I was just explaining what happened to me on the weekend, that one of my friends brought me some cake, which is I had a golf cart accident. And it was not actually very funny when it happened. It was actually very scary. So I have some.
You all right?
I'm okay. I have like a very, very large bruise on my right ass cheek.
Nice.
It's like this big.
Oh.
I won't show you guys that. I just showed them my elbow.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was not great. So, but I'm okay. I'm surviving. I'm on the ibuprofen and ice diet. Okay, so Meghan Markle.
Okay. I don't feel sorry for her. I think anybody marrying into the royal family knew what they were getting into. It's not like it's the 1950s. And I just feel she's a little bit of a narc. I think Harry's also an idiot. So I think the pair of them, you can't. I think it was a number of people have said this. A couple of millionaires can't sit in a billionaire's garden and moan about having a terrible life. It's just, I think she would have broken up any family. I think that's who she is. And I think Harry would chase after any woman.
I think she's ruining his life. I think that she's like, she's separated him from his family. Yeah. Like she's forced him, she's ruined his future and his relationship with his entire family. I think she's such a phony. I was saying to these guys earlier, like, I don't pay attention to the royals. It doesn't really interest me very much. I never paid attention to Meghan Markle. She doesn't interest me. Like, I don't really know anything about her. I don't even know what TV show she's on. I'd never heard of her before all this, and I just haven't followed it all. But I watched the Oprah special, and I was like, this woman is so phony. She's just acting the whole time. And why on earth would you marry into the royal family and then act shocked and be angry at what that entails?
Well, I think like when she sort of talked about, I think we're peak woke now. I think her and Harry, and the fact that if she wasn't a black woman, would she be able to claim such victimhood? So if she was an aristocratic, if she was a daughter of Trump, would she be able to claim the same amount of victimhood as she has? And I don't think she would. I think she was a bit of an it girl. I think she probably always intended to marry a very rich man. I think it's a lie that it was a blind date. Completely. Like, how would a B-list actress have friends that were so friendly with Prince Harry that they could end up in a blind date? I think she probably went to lots of parties with lots of rich men where you meet rich men. Right. But I just find the whole thing, like the color of the baby, and her trying to link that. Now, I don't know if that happened. I wasn't there. It doesn't seem to be quite so forcefully put forward by Harry. But let's say that did happen. And that obviously could either be a curiosity or it could have been a racist thing to say. I don't know who said it or how it was said. But to try and link that with security when actually her child is not the heir to the throne. He's not in line to be heir to the throne. And therefore, when Charles becomes king, he would have security and be treated as a prince, maybe. And so it's all a bit to go, he had, because he was brown, they were asking about brown and he wasn't getting security, as if those two things were somehow linked. And I think it's really disingenuous. Disingenuous.
Yeah, that was super manipulative. But I mean, just the idea, she's complaining about being silenced. Like she's complaining about not being able to speak openly about the royal family to the press. And it's like, well, that's always been the rule. None of them get to, and it sucks for everybody, because they just have to let all these rumors swirl and they can't really say anything. But it's probably good policy because you'd just be constantly chasing the rumors. That would end up being your full-time job if you were trying to address everything that anyone was saying about any member of the royal family. And then she blew it. She throws them all under the bus knowingly, because now she's speaking about it openly, knowing that none of them can respond.
Yeah.
They're part of the royal family.
And we have a really funny relationship in the UK, which I think is difficult for people without royalty to understand. In the same breath as I really don't like the idea that in this country there is a family born into obscene wealth that I contribute to as a taxpayer, or my husband does, that everybody contributes to, even the poorest people fund their lifestyle. But at the same time, I have a great deal of respect for the Queen. And I like Prince William. I like Kate. Don't massively like Charles. I think their kids are cute. I wouldn't pick up a magazine and read an article, but I don't mind seeing them on the TV when they do something sweet and nice for somebody that I know totally makes somebody's day. I'm more than happy to think it's a lovely thing, and I'll watch a wedding. But, I do think the Queen in particular, she thinks she was born to serve this country. And even though I think it's preposterous, I do genuinely think that she feels a great deal of duty towards this country. And so for Meghan to attack them, knowing that they are going to be distant, she's no Diana. She hasn't been killed in a car accident. People are not going to start absolutely loving her because this country went a bit weird with Diana. We sort of broke some British rules when it came to the death of Diana, of people sort of shouting and wailing and crying in the streets. But she used a lot of, if you look at some people have cut interviews with Diana and put the Meghan Markle, some of her phrasing, and it's the same. It's so gross. I don't know enough about her, but if I suddenly found out that she'd coached Harry by pretending to be rather like his mother, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. Doesn't mean that it's his fault either. He's the one, he was born into royalty. They're his family. He's the one that's treated them badly. She maybe just been the sort of final push for him to do it. So I don't think he's absolved of any responsibility.
I just think he's an idiot. I mean, what happens when they get a divorce? Can he
maybe he'll go back to
family?
Maybe he'll go back to his Nazi uniforms for fancy dress. I mean, he's literally the only royal that's put on kind of SS uniforms. He seems like an all right, bloody, stupid, nice bloke. He's a bloody, stupid, nice bloke.
Okay, Meghan Markle, we've covered it. Should we let you go to bed, or what do you think? Do you have anything else we would like to say?
Up to you. I could probably do about 10 more minutes.
Okay, do you want to talk about free speech?
Yeah, let's do that.
For women?
Free speech for women.
I mean...
Well, yeah, go on.
Well, I mean, I suppose this is something that I've started to talk about lately, and obviously I talked to you about it before we did this live stream, which is that I have a big problem with the lack of support for free speech in feminism. And we sort of have decided to hand over free speech to the right or to the libertarians for whatever reason, when in fact free speech matters a great deal to us. And it should be very obvious, at least now. And I have admitted, so I will admit again, that I failed to stand up for free speech in the past as I should have. And I will admit that it really, became clear to me how important this was when we stopped being allowed to say that women are adult human females, and to stop being able to speak the truth about biology and material reality and about, our needs as women. But I don't understand why other women don't see that, at least now. I feel bad that I didn't realize how important it was before. I blame Canada, but Canada doesn't really talk about free speech ever. We totally take it for granted. I just never really thought about it very much before, to be perfectly honest. And I have started to think about it a lot now and to speak out about it a lot now. But after having been through all of this kind of thing, and I've seen what's gone down in terms of censorship, I don't know why women still think that they can say, well, free speech for us, but not for them, because that's what's happened to us. Free speech for them, but not for us, because what they're saying is wrong and harmful and bigoted. And, clearly it's not, but you could say that about anything. It just depends on your perspective or who's saying it.
I think that I'm still surprised. Well, two things. My first gripe really about the whole free speech thing, I guess, is that a lot of women don't get it, and they do almost the thing like with racism. So racism doesn't matter if it's against a white person, because white person has power, therefore there's no real racism, because it relies on these sort of power structures, as opposed to actually sometimes racism doesn't require power structures. It's just an overt, it's just a prejudice against someone. So clearly, if I'm in a country where I have ultimate privilege and someone shouts racist abuse at me, that might not land so heavy, but it would still be racist abuse. And so sometimes I think women see free speech through the same sort of lens and power structures as maybe they would categorize something like racism or sexism. So that's why men can't be victims of sexism. And so they would say that free speech is that all that sort of stuff. It's a bit murky. However, I am more annoyed by the fact that the free speech movement is absolutely dominated by men. And men don't seem to understand that the overwhelming kind of big, massive kick in the guts for women is we can't even say what we are. We can't talk about our bodily functions. We can't talk about our uniqueness. We can't talk about our puberty, our faces, or even what we are is up for grabs. And these men don't acknowledge that at all. They don't acknowledge that, saying, like in the UK, saying that you're a Brexiteer is absolutely nothing like saying that you're a woman. Saying what your political view is on something is genuinely really just a small fry in comparison to not being able to say what you literally are as a woman. And nobody is doing the same to men. So it cannot be compared, because nobody's really taking anyone seriously who's saying men can have vaginas. You don't see that. You don't see trans men are men, except sometimes tagged into trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people are binary, valid. And those people only put the last two in so they can say the first thing.
So do you think that the Trump people or the right wing are vilified and silenced in the same way that women are over this gender identity thing? Because that's what the conversation is, around Twitter censorship. This annoys me too. It's just that, like, you can't be a conservative on the internet. Like, all the conservatives are getting banned and silenced. And it's like, well, I don't think so. I don't think like Trump supporters do get vilified like big time in the media, you know, obviously by liberals, by the left, online, by social media companies, like big time. I don't want to deny that at all. But it's not true that it's only the right wing who's being silenced and censored. And that's where the conversation has ended up around big tech censorship.
Yeah, well, I think they're probably right that like even someone like Crowder, he gets shadow banned and gets demonetized and so on. So I think they're absolutely right that it really is difficult to be a conservative, as they would call themselves, in big corporate and social media, even with companies like Salesforce, which I don't know if have you heard of the company Salesforce? So they're an enormous, very influential company, but they're behind the scenes. So Salesforce will help companies drive sales, clearly, but they will have systems in loads of different companies to enable them to sell shed loads of stuff. So they've got their finger in many pies. Even they said that they didn't want to be working with conservatives. So they're a massive corporation. When you go up the Empire State Building, they are one of the biggest buildings and companies that you can see from the Empire State Building. So they're huge. So I do think conservatives are right. That's not the same as your views being unpalatable and nobody wants to listen to them, and people are going to castigate you for those views as actually saying what you are. Now, I can be a right-wing woman, left-wing woman, conservative woman, apolitical woman, all of those things, but I will never change from being a woman. I can change from being a conservative. I can change my belief systems. It's just not the same. Not the same at all, I don't think. But, you know, it is a terrible thing that
yeah, and it's real. And, you know, we have AOC wanting to put them all on lists, you know.
Yeah, she's
like
human.
Yeah, she's a total idiot. But it's like what I see on Twitter is like these right wingers saying, give me an example of any like left wing or liberal who's been banned, who's been canceled. And, you know, so the implication is that it's only happening to right wing people, to Trump supporters, to conservatives. So
they
don't even see that we exist. They're unaware that they exist. They sort of erase us from the conversation and then pretend that we're not there because we're gone from Twitter. And they're still on Twitter talking about this. So
some of those men, even the commentators who like the same in left-wing circles, there are a few really quite intelligent right-wing men that I would listen to, and then there's quite a few who are just right-wing. And one of them the other day was talking about lesbian couple and their son who they were transitioning, and I would probably argue that they were really quite abusive parents, the pair of lesbians. But he then said about their child's sexuality, and I was like, it's not a sexuality. You even think you're an expert on this. You can't even be bothered to find out that transition, trans, and everything is nothing to do with sexuality. And I do think that when people sort of talk about association with the right, there is sometimes a little bit close for me to a bit of a homophobia when it comes to it still doesn't mean that I think even if you are a homophobe that you don't genuinely think that cutting a teenager's breasts off is a bad thing, because I think you do. But this idea that he didn't even get that being trans and transing your kid was not a sexuality just really annoyed me.
Yeah, I think some of them do conflate actually LGBTQ, so they do put that all in the category of sexual orientation or perhaps deviant or whatever, but many of them do seem to understand. But I mean, so what do we do about free speech for women?
I think it's got to be both individual and collective. I think we have to find other platforms, even YouTube. I got a strike. A girl made a video about me and I replied, but I just talked about how I didn't really believe that she told stories that she was trans her whole life, and then she's got videos from sort of school where she's in really tight fitted dresses with long hair. And I'm just not getting this sort of lie of gender dysphoria. So I did a video on that and I got a strike.
What happens when you get a strike?
If you get another one within like 3 or 6 months, you're right.
Like, but did they email you? Did they send you an email and tell you?
Yeah, they
what
deleted the video. Oh, also, one of the things I did is I uploaded a video where this woman had gone into this hospital and was moaning about COVID. And I uploaded it because I wanted to be able to download it. So in order to transfer it to one computer to another, I put it up on YouTube so I could go and log in from a different computer that wasn't a Mac, just a normal PC, and download it. And by doing that, I got a strike. So I had 2 strikes, but they were far enough apart for them not to have an accumulative effect. But this was a private video that nobody saw on my account that I literally just uploaded so I could download it. And I got a strike. I mean, this woman was absolutely insane. So
did they tell you what you did wrong? Like, did they say what the strike was for? Okay.
For the one about the girl, it was personal harassment, even though it wasn't.
Okay.
Because she's quite young. I felt like, she's a big YouTuber. So her name's Noah Fines. And her stories don't stack up. Her whole persona doesn't stack up. She comes across as a very damaged, attention-seeking narcissist. And I feel quite sorry for her. Obviously, she sort of talked in her old videos about how she really didn't feel like she fit in at this private school. I think she might have got a scholarship or something, but she didn't fit in, and she really missed her mum, and lots of little things that I thought, well, this is the real story. This is the trauma right there. And I don't know, what mother takes her 18-year-old daughter to a surgeon to get their breast sliced off, really? Who's only been saying that she's trans for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I mean, who does that? Who does that who genuinely loves their kids? Because my kids can hate me. They can hate me, but I wouldn't let them hurt themselves like that. It's just not happening. Back to free speech.
All the censorship scares me, obviously, because, I mean, for me, this is my job. And it's
I just got my change.org protecting children thing, not just taken down, but I'm banned from the platform.
You banned from change.org? What was your thing?
I can't log in.
Is this a new thing?
Oh, I did this thing on, so we have a national lottery, and then a government minister decides, it sort of heads it up, and you've got a CEO, and it's run by a company called Camelot. And then what they do with that money, which is, it's quite a sizable amount of money, is they give it to different organizations and charities. And quite a lot of the sort of charities going into school and obliterating safeguarding for children, they are getting lottery funding. So I just put a petition up to say, can we stop giving money to organizations that try and obliterate safeguarding in schools? And because I mentioned that some of these organizations use the cover of trans rights in order to eradicate safeguarding for girls, because I put that particular bit, I'm sure it was taken down. I can't even log in. Crazy. So yeah, censorship's big. I also had a letter from Zoom about my hateful content, my hateful conversation.
Right. What happened with that? They sent you a letter saying what?
Saying it's been brought to our attention that you basically, can we remind you of our terms and conditions about hate content?
Did they say what you said that was hateful according to them?
No.
Yeah. I mean, this is what freaks me out and bothers me. Not the most. It bothers me that we're not allowed to just speak openly and honestly online. But, what bothers me, like, with Twitter, they don't tell you what you did wrong. They just get rid of you and say hateful conduct, but they won't tell you what you said that was hateful. They won't tell you what rule. oh, I got hateful conduct, but they didn't tell me what rule I broke. They just said hateful conduct and then this tweet, but they didn't tell me what was wrong with the tweet. I still don't know what was wrong with the tweet that
that's
broke
more
the
than I
rule.
got. I just tried to log in one day and I no longer had an account.
Really? You didn't even get an email?
Nope.
Wow.
No. Hardcore. It is really scary. It's scary that even in Facebook groups now, if you say something like, "Oh my God, I hate men," stop that, Siri.
That happened to me in a
delete
private
you.
group on Facebook. I said something like, "Why are men disgusting?" And obviously, I don't think all men are disgusting. It was in response to it was like on a thread about like pedophilia or something like that, and they banned me from commenting or using Facebook for like 24 hours or something. It's like,
I got
what?
banned for 30 days for saying you're a man. I got banned for 30 days for you're a man.
Well, these social media companies are doing good in the world, protecting the world from our hateful conduct.
I mean, the thing is, I was looking recently to see what I could do instead of YouTube, and there's nowhere. There's no other platform. I was even looking at Gab TV, and then even some of the larger sort of proper right wingers, like Alex Jones, he was only getting 255 views. So I just thought, well, who's watching? No one's watching that. So if it's not YouTube, what is it?
No, yeah,
And
I
they're
mean,
so
I can't lose my channel, so hopefully I'll be okay.
Well, I think with YouTube, they eradicated the competition by making promises about what you could do on the platform, and then they stopped living up to it. So it's just...
Well, did Twitter do that also? Because Twitter also committed to what was all in the free speech train, and this is a free speech platform, and it's for everyone, and we commit to not banning people for political views, like we won't be politically biased. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just started cracking down on everybody once everybody was dependent on this platform, like in particular media people, journalists, and then of course, like all politicians are on there. But primarily, there's a dog fight.
Quite literally, it's a dog fight.
My dog has become a guard dog since we moved to Mexico. She thinks that she needs to protect the property from the dog that lives on the property. No, it was really easy.
A dog?
Great. No, but she's little, so she just came and can go in the bag with me actually on the plane. So I don't have to put her underneath or anything. But oh my God. They're just barking at each other through the wall, essentially.
I've got 7 dogs at the moment.
Oh, you have all your little pugs.
They are very cute. They're very bitey, but they are very cute. Very cute.
Okay, well, should we sign off? Are we?
Yes.
We'll talk again. I think that at some point, Posey and I will have some kind of announcement to make around free speech for women actions.
Yeah, I think so. Oh my God, that works. Hey!
Okay, let's go.
Right,
thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry about that. Sorry about the cake interruption and the dog barking interruption. Thank you so much for joining me, Kellie-Jay. That was so fun to talk with you. We'll have to do it again very soon. Thanks to everyone who donated and participated in the chat. And like, subscribe. The Patreon link is down below. Thank you again for your support. Okay, we'll see you soon. Have a great sleep, Posey.
Oh, thanks. Nice. Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.